Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Welcome to this second session on Destination City Summit. I'm Jeremy Feinblatt, VP of Strategy at Resonance, and I'm excited to be joined today by Sharon Landis-Fisher, CEO of Tel Aviv Global, Shiona Southern, Managing Director of Marketing Manchester, and Scott Beck, CEO of Destination Toronto. We're excited to have you today, three world-class cities that will share their insights on what's to come for the visitor economy. Sharon, Shiona, Scott, it's great to have you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Great to be here.
Yes,
Great to join you.
My pleasure.
I just saw an article from Skift a few hours ago, actually, that has just announced the travel industry has made a full comeback from the pandemic, surpassing 2019 performance. We all know that varies across destinations, across cities, across sectors as well. Let's maybe focus and start this conversation on business travel. We know that business travel has been cut. Business events have yet to fully rebound. And Scott, I believe you were just recently at IMEX in Frankfurt. Are there emerging trends that you can share and maybe share some perspectives on how that important fair went?
I would love to. First and foremost, I'd like to, I think, confirm that maybe while it's not a trend, meetings are still very relevant and meetings are still a very important part of the human experience. And I think that was clearly delivered while I was at IMEX. And I will say it does feel like the industry is back, as you noted in the Skift article. It is a little bumpy still, though. I know that in our community, we're still not back. And I think as evidenced by a lot of large urban areas, when you don't have the full recovery of business events and business travel, it's hard to be back. And so while we recognize the larger economy we're seeing things in our sort of region where the rural areas and some of the smaller resort areas are way above 2019 levels. So in aggregate, we're doing better, but the cities are still struggling. But those meetings, when they are had, they are feeling very dynamic. And some of the things that we had heard about and talked about throughout the pandemic and we felt were coming in terms of conversations pre-pandemic are real. Technology is a very, very relevant trend in the meetings industry, and not just to enhance the in-person experience, but to expand the content. So the level of the sophistication of the app here that's being used at IMEX is making the experience really, really engaging. And then how they're using that also to translate the expansion of the content. People who aren't here who are hearing about the content. While it's not a total hybrid event, there are elements that are. And I think that's a very important trend to recognize and how you deliver that content. I would say sustainability is clearly a part of today's trend in meetings. And we're seeing that from a lot of the things you would normally see: diversion, recycling containers, reduction of single-use plastics. But here's the conversation that's been the most interesting here in IMEX is people who are coming on a business travel and extending for leisure because it's a better, more sustainable way as it relates to air travel. That's a really prevalent discussion, which I think is a really bold new trend and it's going to be incredible for our industry. And then I think the last thing that I would note is there feels like there's a much stronger social construct in the meeting. You're feeling that people are generally engaging in ways that are very respectful of all the things we're learning about DEI, or however you use that acronym. I think those things are really translating into the actual experience of the attendee at the meeting.
Thanks, Scott. It's funny you talk about technology. I mean, the three of your cities are technology powerhouses. Probably one of the most recognized in the world is Tel Aviv. It's on some extent we hear a lot about tech layoffs, about tech companies reducing business travel, but on the other hand, Tel Aviv has been particularly resilient in owning, at least in your part of the world, the space in terms of technology events and technology tourism. What can other cities learn from what you've been doing well?
That's a great question, Jeremy. So first of all, I must say, Scott, I agree with everything that you had said. And I share the same thoughts about the actual need for people to convene and to meet. And I think conference and convention business is not finished, is not dead, will never be dead as long as the human spirit is alive. And for your question, Jeremy, so yes, Tel Aviv is lucky enough to be a startup city, a high-tech city, and actually getting to be a scale-up city. So this is really our major story here. The Tel Avivian economy, the Israeli economy, is based on technology. Lucky for us, this is the right trend to ride on. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the high-tech sector here in Tel Aviv even rose even higher and higher. More investment, more worth of companies, etc. It's true that during the past few months, with the interest rates, the international global interest rates rising, and money becoming more expensive. So yes, there is somewhat of a mediation of foreign investment, but still Tel Aviv enjoys 78% of capital invested in the high-tech industry in Tel Aviv is foreign capital, okay? So we still enjoy the vote of confidence of the whole world. Tel Aviv is always in the top 10 best high-tech cities in the world. Nearly $400 billion worth of industry in December of 22. So yes, recently it has deteriorated a little bit, but still huge numbers. So this big asset attracts not only foreign investment, but also visitors, also tourists, business tourists coming to meet the talent that resides and works here in Tel Aviv. So this, I think, is our unique selling point. I have to say that Tel Aviv is a great tourist destination. We have the urban scene alongside the coastal line. So we're not just an urban center. We're not just a city beachfront center, a beachfront city. We're both. And the culinary scene and the culture. So we have a lot of things going for us. But I think that the tech industry is our number one magnet. Also, I can say that in Tel Aviv, we have 135 international research and development centers from the biggest world-renowned companies in the world. They open their research and development centers here in Tel Aviv. So this is another reason for people to come to Tel Aviv all the time to meet their colleagues, to meet their peers, for the headquarters to come meet the local branch. So this is, again, another anchor that serves us in maintaining a reasonable incoming tourism level. The question I would ask is, how do we deal with sustainability in that matter? Because many people sign pledges not to fly more than once a year. Tel Aviv is a destination that you have to fly to. You cannot take your car and drive to Tel Aviv like you would from Berlin to Amsterdam. So for us, for example, the sustainability is well, it's an opportunity, but it's also a threat, okay? So that's a challenge that I think we will all have to learn how to live with.
Thank you, Sharon. One of the things we love talking about at World City is placemaking, obviously. And it's just recently that public leaders have realized or acknowledged the role of tourism and the role of DMOs actually in placemaking and in creating vitality in our downtowns. Today, more than ever, as office space has still yet to bounce back and to come back to levels that we've seen before. I believe in Toronto, I read this recently, 40 office occupancy, for example, is 42% of pre-pandemic norms. And this is a huge opportunity for tourism organizations like yours to really reshape and have a role in reshaping our downtowns. Shiona, something interesting has happened in Manchester recently. I mean, you've made a lot of headlines. It was impressive seeing Lonely Planet, best city to travel in 2023, Time Out, best city to visit in 2023, National Geographic, best city in the world 2023. Congratulations, great work here. I think in our own ranking as well, Manchester has come up this year. But what's made the biggest headlines, at least in our industry, is the tourism tax, the UK's first, that you've launched about a month ago. And the purpose of this tax, if we've understood correctly, is to improve the visitation experience. So you have put together a business improvement district made up of hotels and hospitality actors. So we'd love to hear about the rationale behind this tax and how this, how you see this as an element to improve the visitation experience and overall vibrancy of the urban core.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. And Sharon, I'd love to visit Tel Aviv. You paint a great picture there, so I'll be first in line. I think in terms of recovery from the pandemic, we're there or thereabouts. I think on the international side, we still have to get some of our international visitors back, but leisure, domestic tourism is back. And actually, surprisingly, I think the business conference sector is really strong. So we were delighted with our the businesses that we met in the conferences that want to come to Manchester, and we're seeing much longer lead-in time. So one of them is for 2032, which is unheard of, say, a couple of years ago. So that shift, I think the quality that people are looking for, I agree with Scott, people are looking to do that business and leisure stay over. And I think they are looking more and more for a quality networking and content experience. So, in terms of Manchester, we've got 3 million people in Greater Manchester. Our campus is very tight. So when you come into the city, there is a buzz. There's very much in the downtown activity. You won't see that experience of nobody around. So when you come out of a conference or come for business or students or visitors, you always kind of see that life. So I think all of that, has been the benefit from our ambition as a city to grow. So right through the pandemic, and now we are in the top 10 FDI cities in Europe for digital. We're the city that's invested most in digital investment in the UK. So digital is much up there. Our conferences come from either digital, health and life sciences, which is really strong with our universities, and with advanced manufacturing. We've got the Graphene conference here right now. So all of those conferences have held quite nicely. But we're building, and when I go back to ambition, and I will come on to the tourist tax, the ambition is to keep growing. So on the investment side, I think we've got the most cranes in Europe at the moment on our skyline still, we're building, and hotels as well. So we're seeing another 35% of beds going in over the next 4 years. So you see a city that's almost 3 million people, 2.9 million, but it's growing to the next level. And that's at foreign direct investment in culture and sport. And then that then feeds right through to the tourism economy, the benefit from it. So I've been working with the team here on a tourist tax for the last 6 years. It doesn't happen that quickly here. We are calling it a city visitor charge to try and get away from a tax, which was not everyone's appetite. And so we've been working with the sector, and there's very much buy-in to the sector. And the rationale behind that was because we're investing in cultural destination infrastructure. We're building a second arena. So it's going to be the largest indoor arena in Europe, 23,000, which is going to be all about live music. We've already got an arena, so that'll be 2 indoor arenas, plus all the sporting grounds. So we're investing in that. And we're investing in another brilliant performance space right in the middle of the city called The Factory, which opens this year and opens with our international festival. So all of that infrastructure and the additional 35% bed stock those visitors have got to come from somewhere. And the hoteliers and accommodation were, quite rightly looking at the risk behind that in terms of their occupancy rates. So occupancy is really healthy, particularly after COVID, the bounce back on leisure at weekends. During the week, corporate is not really recovered, as we've been hearing. Fully, we're probably about 7 or 8% behind where we were. So to fill those non-peak periods, that's where we had to make a difference with the tourist tax to invest for the future. So the sector's right behind us, and we put in place a business improvement district that would then have a double leverage, that the visitor then pays £1 per bedroom per night. And that was brought into force in the 1st of April. So the media coverage was really positive. Actually, visitors get that. And this goes back to a meeting, a study visit I had with Barcelona, quite a good relationship with Barcelona. And I learned about their tourism tax and what they did after the Olympics and how they've handled that. So come full circle, it means for the next 5 years, the investment into the visitor economy is £3.5 million per year for the next 5 years. And that will be completely focused, not on roads and rubbish collection and lighting. It will be focused on the visitor economy purely. Along 4 strands, about 10% will go into welcome, some in-depth hotspot cleaning and welcome hosts. So that whole customer service welcome. And the other 3 strands, very strong. One is directed solely at marketing for overnight stays, another one on business conference and events, and the third on consumer events. So that's quite nicely, I think, to bring out the ambition and to keep that going. We're the first city in the UK to bring out a tourist tax, but there's been many other DMOs that have been on the phone to try and do that. But I guess we've all been looking at you guys elsewhere in the world to see what can be done. So I'm really glad it's come to fruition.
Welcome to the club, Shiona. I think, Jeremy, if I may say one thing, I think one of the things that I think is really incredible from hearing the stories from Sharon and Shiona is there is clearly this connection to both a strong economy, but also a very livable city. I mean, so much of what Shiona's talking about, and like so much again of what Sharon was talking about, indicate why the city is both livable and then a place for visitation, right? That those cultural assets are going to be built by this tax in Manchester aren't relevant just to the visitors. Clearly, it improves the quality of life and the experience of being in a city. And I think that's where I'm still bullish on the resiliency of cities and how they are going to come back. Well, we may be struggling at 43% of pre-pandemic levels in our office buildings. We just had ULI, the Urban Land Institute, in our city last week, and there was 6,000 people. And I was lucky. I was able to speak and engage with several of the councils that were there, and they remarked on how vibrant they felt our city was. And we're sitting here at half of where we were pre-pandemic, feeling, woe's me. We're not back to where we were, right? And Sharon and Shiona, you know how that feels to live and breathe it and understand it, and yet have someone from outside of your community tell you how great it is, right? And I think what really drove home for us this reality was we have a lot of people that live in downtown Toronto, and that has changed the landscape for us dramatically. It's kept that vibrancy that is so important that I was also mentioned in a recent article, I think it was from the New York Times, where you can have a full convention center, but then at 5 o'clock, if your streets roll up and there's no one there, that's not a very good experience. And I think this idea of the strength of these cities is really in this coming together of the strength of the economy, where we know we're strong, where we're leaning into it, and then the cities are livable, that they're making investments in the city to make it livable, and that makes a great place to visit.
I completely agree with you, Scott. If your inhabitants, if your residents want to live in the city, it's a good sign to forecast that other people would want to come. Otherwise, you're doing something wrong. And I think, this is our responsibility as the local government to make sure that the heartbeat of the city keeps pumping to be alive and to attract people from your own city, your own country, and of course from the world. For us, this is the story of the liberal, pluralistic city that Tel Aviv is. Tel Aviv is like the symbol of liberalism for us here in Israel, and also for many people in the world. They see it. We're very big LGBTQ plus destination friendly, one of the top for the community. Actually, we're having our quarter of a century, our 25th Pride Parade. And so to attract all these diverse population, so to be a destination where you can come and you can be who you are, who you want to be, who you feel like being. And I think this is the magic for international global cities, such as our cities here in this panel. And it's a key element, I think. And of course, the tolerance for all kinds of population and visitors is key to our success. And we have to maintain, sometimes the world has a bit of a tendency to go right wing, to go a little bit to populism, to go a little bit. And so we have to maintain our pluralistic, liberal approach, I think, if we want to succeed culture-wise, economy-wise, social-wise, and prosperity-wise. I think it's a key element.
Thank you, Sharon. So maybe to end, last question. I know we have a few minutes left. 3 years ago, we would all be sitting together in this Zoom room or World City virtual room.
No, don't take us back there, Jeremy.
No, we won't. We'd all be reading articles, pretty smart people saying how tourism has changed forever. I don't know if, I feel like this is a long time ago, 3 years ago. And overall, a lot of it resembles pre-COVID. Scott, you mentioned there's a stronger appetite for rural areas. That's true, but that COVID was probably just a catalyst to this. This is a trend that we'd seen previously. But a lot of things are the same. And the appetite for discovery, for experiences, for visitation, for cities, for excitement has come back. What do you see as leaders in your cities and in the tourism industry changing in the years to come? What can we expect in terms of consumer behaviors, in terms of demand, in terms of experiences, in terms of sustainability as well? What will change and what will stay the same? Shona, maybe we can start with you.
Sure. I think you said it in your last sentence, Jeremy. I think the centering of sustainability has got to be key. We were just reflecting. We're hot off the mark. 18 years ago, we produced a sustainable tourism strategy. So we're probably one of the first in the UK. It stood on its own, but now it's very much core within our tourism strategy. I think most cities are. So I think being core to everything we do as an industry, whether on the business or leisure side, is absolutely key. We've just signed up to the Global Destination Sustainability Index. So we're taking this seriously. We're benchmarking against, the other sectors as well. And it's the infrastructure within our city that makes us green. So it goes right through to transport, our transport policy. Our mayor has brought in a brilliant strategy called the B Network. Our emblem is the B. So it's B Network that goes through biking lanes, walkability, tram, bus and train routes throughout the city region. So clean air zone, so the air we breathe, that's really important, not only for people who live here, but for visitors as well. So that centering on sustainability is absolutely key. And the way the place looks as well is really key. So 10 years ago, we didn't have much green within our city. Now we've got, 4 brand new parks around Greater Manchester. We've got beautiful Royal Horticultural Park In Stockport, we have, in Salford, we've got beautiful ones right in the middle of the city. So we've created our own skyline. Our developments are now developing gardens and pathways and walkways as a mandated requirement of development in the city. So we're seeing much more of a natural environment coming into the built environment. So I think that would be front and centre for me, that one pillar. Plenty more, but I'll let Scott and Sharon add in before our time's up.
Thanks, Shona.
If I may, the tension, I think, would be between, on one extreme hand, would be seizing the day, people wanting to go on holiday, to meet new destinations, to find out more about other cities and cultures, to rest from work, to enjoy life. And on the other hand would be the responsibility people feel towards the environment. So in between those extremes, there would be a tension that people will have to, try to balance for themselves. So I think maybe it would be less times a year that you go, but when you go, you stay longer. A little bit of slow tourism, you stay longer. Maybe you can do 2 or 3 or 4 cities in a row on one trip, or you try to balance your misbehavior, polluting the environment, coming over with an airplane, etc. So maybe we should try to offer ways for the tourist to compensate the environment for their behavior, either by donating something or by trying to compensate in their own home to balance us globally. I think this would be something that we need to deal with, and to think and to offer our visitor the redemption, if I may, for them to feel good about themselves, that they're exploiting the environment by traveling so much, and on the other hand, how can they compensate in their regular life or during the trip. I think this would be the tension that we need to balance somehow and try to come with a good offering to our customers.
Thank you, Sharon. Maybe one last word, Scott.
Well, okay, thank you for having this conversation. I would say that the thing I'm the most excited about is this idea of transforming our central business districts to the central connection district. That business is about connection, and if we can get away from that acronym, make these downtown environments in our cities easier to connect in. So everything that Sharon said about transportation, everything that Sharon said about whys and hows and do that, if we can be part of a catalyst and our industry be catalytic to that conversation about central business districts becoming central connection districts, we'll have vibrant cities, and we will be able to do all of the things that we just want to do for our communities and that our communities want to do and be.
Thank you, Scott. And I think that's a great segue to the last session of the day, a lecture and Q&A with Joe Pine on the experience economy that's now the transformation economy. Scott, Shona, Sharon, thank you so much for joining us, and hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you
very much, Jeremy. Thank you.